Ooh, I'm gonna be snotting all in this video. I hate that, but gotta get recorded. We look at civil rights pictures in black and white like they were so long ago, and they weren't. Um, when we talk about black heroines like Rosa or Coretta, Asada, but when we talk about misogynoir, I genuinely don't want you to go that far. I need you to know that I am talking about my lived experience, my sister's lived experience. These are everyday individuals. And when you hear things like the words black girl magic is a celebratory or cultural high five that says, like, I see you doing what you do in spite of the shit that you have to go through to do it. If it were while there is no single form of oppression that is not linked to others, intersectionality is where we acknowledge individuals' identities and how those structures are impacting them because of those identities. So again, I don't want you to make it all the way to Coretta and Rosa. I want us to think about current events. I want you to think about the fact that people are currently, I say people, mad because there was a prince who said, I'm not going to let you kill my wife like you killed my mother. And they moved here. And people go, oh, they were rich, like, oh, boo-hoo. But see, the thing is, Megan didn't know she was black till she went over there. She found out real quick that she was black. She didn't know prior to going over there. See, when you're a dark-skinned black woman, you wake up knowing you black. You ain't never questioned whether you was black. This 4C curl pattern gave it away. This skin tone gave it away. It's not something that has ever not been a part of my life. We're going to talk about colorism. Little girls today, they get to see Lupita. But there was no Lupita when I was growing up. In order to be pretty, you were told you needed to be light-skinned with long hair like Halle Berry or Vanessa Williams. That's what beauty looked like. But girls today get to see something different. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you think that my soror and Vice President Kamala Harris would be in that White House if she were my skin tone, you'd be a fool. She was strategically picked. Colorism is real. So, a couple of things, like always, we're going to agree, like James Alvin said, we can agree to disagree and still love each other, unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. Parties, politics should never get caught up in human rights. Human rights is simply taking the time to see the humanity in another. It's not about your belief system. It's not about what you think is right. It is acknowledging that everybody's flawed and that we are all doing the best we have with the information that we have. So, while racism is a chronic and highly infectious and terminal disease. We often talk about racism, and in order to rid ourselves of racism, then we need to talk about anti-racism, right? And that's true. We need to be anti-racist. But in a country built on anti-blackness, if you don't address anti-blackness, you cannot fully address racism. Which means if you're going to address anti-blackness, you have to address the intersectionality of gender and race and what that looks like. This is El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, or as you may know him, Malcolm X, in 1967.
The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. And as Muslims, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us to respect our women.
So, what does it mean when Malcolm says that black women are disrespected and unprotected? In a system and society, in a world built on white supremacy, that means that there are certain things that I'm unable to do, and that is weaponize my fear and or being unprotected. You may recall in 2020, Amy Cooper was a white woman who interrupted this black man while he was bird watching because he didn't want her dog pooping. And does anybody remember the story? And he was very upset. She was very upset. In fact, I'll find the video, Jennifer, since you're not familiar. And he was recording her for his own safety. And she picks up the phone and decides she's going to call the police and goes into hysterics. And all of this happened because he said, your dog can't poop over there. And then she immediately weaponized her whiteness. Because if the police come on scene, who's right and who's wrong is irrelevant. There's a white woman crying, and that's never good for a person of color. We can simply ask Emmett Till and several other black men and women who are no longer here. If I cry in public, people are like, what's wrong with that black woman? Why she over there crying like that? Right? Why? Because there are tropes like strong black women that are killing black women every day. Whether black women have internalized that, I don't even allow people to call me that anymore. I'm good on being strong. I've been strong long enough. And more often than not, black women are not strong because they want to be. They've had to be. It's something that, that's to develop a skin in order to be able to just function. These are things that you learn in elementary. There are so many times where I am facilitating racial dialogues around the globe, and there may be individuals who are non-black, maybe white, and they're like, I don't even think I realized I was white until I was like in high school. Oh shit, yeah, I definitely knew I was black instantly. Just instant. It's like they handed me my card. Here you go. Right there at the beginning. But that's the difference in entering a world made for you and then entering a world where you have to try to make space for yourself. Misogyny, we know, is the hate of women. And misogyny looks like Amber Heard saying, this man abused me. This man attacked me. This man was emotionally abusive. This man did these things to me. And then this is her lived experience. And he says, I'm going to sue you for ruining my reputation. And no one's even listening to the fact that she's like, are y'all listening to what I said? So if someone who's actually able to weaponize, right, their whiteness, right? If she stood outside crying for some reason, people are going to rush to her aid. It's going to happen. I mean, it just is what it is. We've all seen it happen in society, on TV and in real life. Then to understand misogynoir means that you understand there is no aid coming. It means that more often than not, you have to figure out a way to save yourself. And that is where, whether it's a callousness, because you've been scarred enough, and and that scar tissue, whether emotional, or spiritual, has healed over. But it is the identification of saying, let's be equitable about experiences and look at them through that lens. It's about being honest. It's saying, yes, every ethnicity on American soil that is Black or person of color has experienced racism, discrimination, and hate at some point in time in this country's history. It is also true that the category for white has changed 22 times since we started classifying people. And who could be considered white has changed 22 times since we started classifying people. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I ain't never been in the listing. I'm going to just go ahead and tell you that one now. All right? Just so you know. But if you recall, when we spoke last class, and we talked about even during slavery times, when people were enslaved, your heritage or lineage used to be based on your paternal lines, right? But that meant that when slave owners were raping, because it's not possible to have a consensual relationship with someone you think you own, when slave owners were raping their slaves, their enslaved women, and they were birthing children, that would mean that those children were free, because if their father is white, according to the U.S., that means you're white. Then the white men who run the country was like, that's stupid, we can't do that. Whatever your mommy is, that's what you are. That's how we're going to do this, right? And thus, we changed the laws again. But that's just based on paternity and maternity. When the Irish came to America, they too were not allowed to be considered white. They got on a train in the East, and they were Black when they got on the train. By the time they got off the train, they were allowed to be white. Listen, I don't make this up. You can read the history books. Point is, they then got to be considered to be white, which is why whiteness is a concept that has absolutely nothing to do with biology whatsoever. And it is how we classify people, but it's how we've classified people in order to be able to discriminate and to cause oppression intentionally. Misogynoir is a term that comes from a Black woman named Moya Bailey, who is an African American gay feminist. And this is the same prism. It's kind of Dr. Chester Pierce. He came up with the word microaggression. Microaggressions are those little bitty sayings or nuances, looks. These are things that let individuals know that they are not welcome, basically. And this is something that he was looking at in the workplace and found that there were disparities in how individuals were treated. And so it was made specifically to talk about race. And then Mary Rowe came along later and created micro inequities to talk about any, marginalized population and how they will experience slights and things of that nature, right? And the same is true when it comes to misogyny. There was already a term for misogyny, but the same way we know that there is a feminist movement, we also know that Black women didn't feel included in the feminist movement and then created the womanist movement because they weren't allowed to see themselves in the feminist movement. So misogyny, it is no different than them hearing the word misogyny go, well, that don't apply to me. I'm already not looked at as a woman, so I need something to describe my lived experience. And Moya Bailey came up with misogynoir. Misogynoir is a term that refers to misogyny directed towards Black women, where both race and gender intersect in forming a bias against them. Misogynoir is used to describe how racism and anti-Blackness affect women's experiences of misogyny, because noir in French means black. Now, despite the fact that sexism damages all women, white women are typically assumed to present as the norm, leading to rejection of a specific intersectional discrimination faced by black women. Okay? Because everything has to have an antithesis, right? So if there is light, there must be dark. If there is black, there must be white, and so forth. So if white is the norm, then the exact opposite, right, means that you are nowhere near the norm. And that the people in between, they can get closer to the norm, but you don't get any closer to the norm. Does that make sense what I'm saying? If there's a spectrum here, right, on either end. Which means that more often than not, women of color can also feel unseen because they can feel like, well, everybody just cares about the black women and the white women. The black women are going, I know that you feel like that, but it's because I'm all the way back here. I'm yelling from back here, though, you know? But it's just being mindful that in this work, everybody's lived experience matters. And reshaping a world where everyone gets to bring their whole self and feel comfortable enough to bring their whole self, well, that means that we have to decide what that looks like. 2 years ago, I was doing a workshop for LRIC with my co-conspirator, Donald Wood. And at the end of the workshop, he asked me, what would a racially equitable world look like? And then I started crying. Then I got mad at him. And I started crying because I not have any idea. I don't have any context. I have absolutely no context for what that would look like. I can't even tell you what that would look like. I know my lived experience. What I know is that I have 2 black sons, and I fear that they could be Emmett Till any day. I'm a black woman, and I fear going to the grocery store. I live in a world where it wasn't until the world saw people slow down and a man have someone on his neck for 8 minutes before they said, oh shit, racism is real. Maybe they're not lying about what the police do. No shit, Sherlock. Because a whole group of people just want to get together and say, our lives should matter because we bored. That's exactly why. That's exactly why. But it's also true that we, as a country and as a people, riot in the streets for Mike Brown and Trayvon, and we riot for George Floyd, but we don't riot for Breonna. We don't riot for Sandra Bland. And that is not only about anti-blackness, but specifically misogynoir. And that is because anti-blackness is the dehumanization of black bodies and lives. Anti-blackness is, well, he should have just complied. Only one of these 2 people is at work. If someone cusses me out on my job, it is not my job to be like, well, I'm going to cuss you back out. It's more like, I'm at work, they're not. Only one of us has a responsibility, right? To do what we've been asked to do. I have no idea what individuals are supposed to do. My individuals, I mean myself, if your hero and murderer are wearing the same outfit. Who do I call? Sandra Bland, the suicide, was about to start a new job the next day. Yeah, that sounds like a woman who's really, really about to take herself out. Because the policeman said she was mouthy. How dare this black woman be? What? Insubordinate? Not listen? In a society ruled by patriarchy and racism, in 2008, the world told you then, I'll take a black man over a white woman. And Hillary lost, right? Which means if they'll take a black man, and we know how we feel about people of color often in this country, then black women would be even lower than the white woman, right? In the same hierarchy. The thing is, it gets internalized by Black people as well. We know Rosa Parks. You know Rosa Parks? You nod your head. Yeah, you do. And then how many of you know Claudette Colvin? Okay. Well, guess what? She sat down on that bus first. She was a 15-year-old Black woman who sat down and said, I'm not moving. But she was dark-skinned and a single mother. And the civil rights movement said she'd be a bad look for the movement. But Rosa is light-skinned. Rosa had status. That's colorism and misogynoir, and perpetuated by her own people. When you're watching television, I want you to watch how many times fine Michael Ealy gets to be the love interest, even though they keep making him out to be a psycho. But dark-skinned Black men are always the villain. And this is even if there's a Black movie. Now, colorism is an issue across the globe. It's not just in America. That is why whitening cream is the number one beauty product in East Asia, South Asia, and in several parts of Africa. Because the more fair-skinned you are, the beautiful. Now, I have a friend, Sarah Tark. Sarah Tark is an Indian woman, and she shares this story often that when she was born, her family said, oh, she's so dark. You're going to have to educate her. She'll never get a husband. The internalization of that is why whitening cream is being used to bleach skin, which in and of itself is self-hate, because you've decided to remove your skin tone to be closer to a beauty standard that for all intents and purposes makes themselves look like me. Can you imagine growing up in a world where you are told you are unattractive, but then people take your face to plastic surgeons to get the things that you already have, like full lips and round asses? Isn't that crazy? Can you imagine? It's ugly on me, but it's really pretty other places. Is it? Help me understand. We use Black women's likeness to sell everything from Pine Sol to vaccines. Take a look. First woman in America to get it. What she look like? Black woman. First person in Arkansas. What she look like? A Black woman. While simultaneously killing Black women in hospitals by not listening to them and disregarding when they say they're in pain. My likeness is fine. My life, no regard. In the Breonna Taylor trial, she was at home in her pajamas. Sleep. The police came to pick up someone who wasn't even at her house. But when they took those police to trial, was it for killing Breonna? No, it was for endangering the white people next door. That is why they went to trial. Colorism is an issue across the globe, but colorism is a byproduct or consequence of white supremacy. They went. I don't know. Hold up. Hold up. Wait. Y'all didn't want to sing Snoop Dogg? It's cool. Stuck in my head. What is the name of that show? Go on. Oh, there it is. Mhm. Let me know if you can hear it when it starts to play. It's that dang storm outside.
Now, a closer look at a struggle many Americans face, the bias of skin tone. It's called colorism, and it's an eye-opening topic, and covering it was championed by a member of our GMA team we recently lost, producer Daisha Riley.
Yeah, this is such an important story, and Daisha felt that it was really important to shine a light on this problem that is so recognized in communities of color, but rarely discussed publicly. Deborah Roberts is here with more on this story. Good morning, Deborah.
Good morning, Cecilia and Michael. And I have to say that I am humbled and honored to bring forth one of the last pieces that Daisha produced for us. Once again, a provocative issue, many that I've had an opportunity to explore with her over the years. And this one shining a light on bias around skin tones, not among different ethnic groups, but within the same communities of color. Some call it light privilege.
She's pretty for a dark-skinned girl.
Their parents will call me negro, which means black in Spanish.
It's been an open secret for generations.
There's this like fetishization of light skin.
It was always black or white. You know, don't get too black.
Colorism, prejudice based on skin tone, and a preference for light skin over dark. The unfortunate phenomenon spread across all groups of color.
Within Asian Americans, this model minority mindset to distance yourself from other people of color by like positing yourself as like the most like hardworking and law-abiding minority in this country. In a way, in order to kind of like gain favor with white people.
Dr. Joy DeGruy, who studies racial trauma, says colorism is rooted in proximity to whiteness.
The whole notion that white is the best, the correct, the most intelligent, the most right about everything. And as you move along the color spectrum, of the darker you are, the less important, beautiful, viable, capable, all of those things that the society has imposed upon us based on that notion of supremacy.
Its impact woven into American society and can affect every aspect of life. Take a look at the differences in wages for a dark-skinned African American, a brown skin, and a light-skinned African American. The study showing hourly wages among blacks literally rising as skin tone lightens. Lighter-skinned minorities viewed as more intelligent by employers, even with identical education as their darker-skinned counterparts. Experts say these examples of colorism have long-lasting effects of both mental and physical trauma.
The anti-blackness started with this whole idea that the darker you are, the less human you are. And so everyone's distancing themselves from that. I think multi-generational trauma is evident.
I hated the way I looked. I just wanted to like scratch the dark skin out of my face.
One time I was in the bathtub and I wanted to stay in longer so my skin color could get lighter. I just thought that's how it worked.
Anti-colorism organizations like the Beauty Well Project in Minnesota work to end the stigma against darker-skinned people of all races who face discrimination from society as well as their own communities.
I know I was not alone. I know I'm not the only dark-skinned girl that has been bullied. You know, so we need more dark-skinned girls and boys just to speak out.
Colorism sparking a lot of conversations lately, even highlighted in a best-selling novel, The Vanishing Half. Here are some statistics that Daisha was able to uncover. Darker-skinned girls 3 times more likely to be suspended from school. Darker-skinned drivers more likely to be even arrested or pulled over. A big problem that we obviously need to do a lot of work on. Cecilia?
It is, Deb. Thank you. And we're going to start right now by talking about it. That's the first step. So let's bring in Amira Adway from the Beauty Well Project in Minnesota.
So, the thing is, when we're sharing this is not about, it's never about making anyone feel bad, because that's the point. No one can help how they were born. And the craziest part is that the things that have been changed or internalized in Africa, there were many tribes who melanin, which is what makes your skin dark, was the darker someone was, the richer they were. Right? I mean, like people were in awe of them, and they were said to have been blessed by the gods more. But anti-blackness. Anti-blackness is the dehumanization of Black people. This is everything from the disregard of the fact that Trayvon was a boy walking in his own neighborhood, and some man who's not even a police officer said he looked out of place and then followed him. Anti-blackness is when Ahmaud Arbery was just jogging and two white men felt he owed them an explanation to exist. That's the dehumanization, because he wasn't doing anything. But you're existing in my space as a Black man, and thus you owe me an answer. So anti-Blackness is when we talk about 400 years of enslaved people, who, side note, we've literally paid reparations to everybody else we've ever harmed. Everyone. Even the Japanese that we kept in internment camps after Pearl Harbor. Everyone. We are still paying Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We are still paying the Marshallese because of what we did. It's like slavery that is over. Get over it. Can we get over white supremacy too? Because that's still a thing. White supremacy actually caused slavery. So slavery may be gone, but like white supremacy is still here. So I'm going to get over it when y'all get over it, right? Like, I'm going to stop when y'all stop. Like, as a society, when we hear the word privilege, people feel often that something is being taken from them. And I'm not even just talking about race. To me, privilege means that I identify the things I didn't have to think about. If I am standing on stage, you have the same degree I have. We both up here with degrees. Understand that means we both went through interview processes. And the fact that I still made it in means that you have got to know that it was harder. Not just because I'm Black, but because I'm dark skinned. My skin being darker. They did a study in Arkansas. Well, actually, they've done this study across the nation. The short of the story is, the darker you are, the harsher your sentence for the same crime. And that's tough. It's tough for me to think that Jen and I go to jail because we were shoplifting. She gets 3 years. I get 6. We took the same thing. So it's not just about the explicit things that are said. It's not just about rude, backhanded compliments like people telling me growing up, "You're so pretty for a dark-skinned girl." Because the implication and the impact of what you said is, dark-skinned people are ugly and you're different. That's what you said. It's a backhanded compliment. It is a backhanded and ugly compliment. When I had friends in high school, like, "Amber, but you're not like other Black people." I literally am. I am absolutely like other Black people. Just like us. Am I the only one you know? Because that may be why you're saying that. If you knew maybe 3, you wouldn't think I was that different. Because I'm not. Just like them. Misogynoir. Misogynoir is when Beyonce came out with a song called Brown Skin Girls. Because if you cannot yet understand why brown, Black, and dark-skinned women would need to find ways to uplift themselves, and all you heard was, "That's an exclusive song." This is an exclusive world. And this one song is something that's supposed to make me smile. And your issue is that someone saw me. That's like, can you understand how evil that is? That you're upset because in this moment, I feel seen by music. That is misogynoir. Misogynoir is, if I say it, I'm angry. But Katie gets to be passionate. Why can't I be passionate? I have actually never done this with my neck. It's weird. I don't know any people who did that. That is weird. I've never actually seen this thing happen. You can catch these hands though, but I've never actually done anything like that with my neck. That's weird. So Misogynoir, regardless of whether you like Aquafina, she's making a caricature of who I am. Her accent is what she thinks Black women sound like, and she gets to be famous for it. But Shanae is ghetto. Things are mainstream and they're creative, but when they're in the hood, they're ghetto. But Black people didn't create the ghetto. In fact, white people created the ghetto and they put Jewish people there first, and then they put Black people after Jewish people got to be white. First they weren't white, then they got to be white, and then they didn't have to be here anymore. So that's how that works. White people have expanded. Black people have been Black all this time. We ain't got to go nowhere. You're just Black. Afro-Latina people don't get to be Latina. They like, now you Black. How is that? They speak Spanish. Just speaking Spanish, you don't speak English. That's an Afro-Latina. But Black, one-dimensional. But white people can be European and Irish, and they can be all of these other things. But I get to be Black. Acknowledging that there are different rules for different people is how we change them. It's not about making it uncomfortable. It's acknowledging that oppression's probably pretty uncomfortable. So it's not really fun, you know? And if you're willing to experience it for a moment, I'm willing to give you some of it. Intersectionality is a term that was coined and created and has been cited more times than any other law term by a Black woman named Kimberly Williams Crenshaw. We use the word intersectionality and DEI all the time. I can probably count on one hand how many times I've seen people give Kimberly credit. Misogynoir, Moya Bailey, a gay Black woman who has often said she doesn't even feel she gets to be a part of the LGBTQ community because that is for white men. She's not a white man. Feminism is for white women. She like, well, where do I go? Where exactly does Moya get to sit? That's intersectionality. When you have more than one marginalized identity. Thing is, when you have women like this that say, okay, hold up, I understand this, but you have to understand the reason that they know it's different is because they understand misogyny. On the flip side, if the world, the individuals took a moment to say, let me see if I can understand intersectionality. Let me see if I can understand misogynoir instead of Black women always have to be different. No, Black women that are different get excluded. Black women that are different stand out. And Black women who stand out, they reap consequences. You see now in society a movement of Black women wearing their own hair, wearing their froze, and the sheer fact that legislation had to be passed in California so that Black women can wear their hair the way it grows out of their head. That's most certainly an example of not only white supremacy, but that's what that is an example of. The way my hair grows out of my head must be regulated by legislation. I tell my son all the time, baby, your hair, God loved you so much, he allowed your hair to grow up to kiss him. Your hair is trying to reach God. That's a good thing. But if you've been told your whole life that your natural features, listen, the truth of the matter is, misogynoir isn't just about hateful words. It's about hate in and of itself. And it is something that has taken place in the beginning, if you think about this country, because Black women didn't get to be Black women. They were birthing farms. They were cattle. They were used. They paired the biggest buck slave up with very fertile Black women so that they could reproduce and have more money and pick more cotton. That is why I wear a shirt that says, why should I work? I built this shit for free. Lazy. My ancestors have proved that we're not lazy, but the narratives, well, the narratives can be proven with the truth. But anti-Blackness, that's why those narratives persist. Anti-Blackness is why even other people of color don't want to be associated with Black people. Because there is strength in numbers. And people of color are the global majority. Literally. But if I can keep them separate and assist in building a culture which makes them want to be closer to me than they do to themselves, I don't have to worry about them teaming up. When slavery first began, it wasn't just Black people. It wasn't just brown people. There were white people that were enslaved. At which time, slave owners said, oh, they're going to start siding with them. When the revolution started to happen, when people started to revolt. So then they changed the rules and they allowed white indentured servants to rule over the other slaves, which set up class structure, hierarchy. This is where the division came from because at first, poor people were just poor. Black, brown, doesn't matter. And to this day, our country still runs off the Black, the brown, and the poor. If you got to stay at home during the pandemic, well, then you get to consider yourself blessed and lucky because the service industry are women who look like me. And that's why our communities were impacted more. It wasn't because Black people were like, oh, the coronavirus doesn't exist. No, it's because Renee didn't get to stay home. I did. Having to be out in it because we can't keep shutting down the economy, even though people are dying and other countries have done it. I mean, we can't. Okay, we can't. But we don't have to shut down the economy if it's based off the Black, the brown, and the poor, because we've already dehumanized them through anti-Blackness. So them dying, we're used to hearing these numbers on. We're used to hearing that Black people are having a hard time. We're so used to it that we're numb as a society. Numb to the point to where when that group of people said, Black lives matter, my life matters. Hold up. All lives matter. If that was true, well, why do I die at disproportionate rates? And if all lives matter, then why is there opposition to mine mattering? If they do. Misogynoir runs rapid, not just in everyday hate, but history. Anybody know Sarah Bartman? Yeah. So this Black woman that you see before you is a woman from she is an indigenous woman from Africa. Her mother died when she was young. Her father died shortly after that. And during that time, honestly, people who don't look like her got a hold of her. She had a large buttocks. And they were fascinated by her large behind. They were fascinated by her hips. And they wanted to put her on display. And did. Now, the argument is they say, well, she signed the contract. She chose to do this. Yes. The woman who is unable to read signed a lengthy contract putting herself in slavery where she did not make much money. Yes. That absolutely sounds like consent. But fighting for her, well, that would require us to be against anti-Blackness. And we're used to dehumanizing, especially a group of people that we have used to simply make babies and breed for 400 years. The opposition is ingrained in the fabric of our society. Black women are acutely aware that we're unable to do things alone because of numbers. Which is why when it's time for elections, Black women are like, hold up. And we're first going to say, well, who are the white women looking for, right? And because if we pair up together, because Black women show up in the largest percentage, even though we are not a large group, and we vote more than... So, but we know that numbers matter. But in 2016, whether you like Trump or not, what you saw is because white women voted for him, they sided with whiteness over their own interests. And Black women don't have the luxury. I don't have the luxury because I don't get that self-interest. No one's going to come for me if I am crying. No one is going to check on me. And me being in a hospital saying something is broken, something doesn't feel right, still makes me 3 to 4 times more likely to die. And the sad part about that is the numbers change drastically when there is racial concordance among patient and provider. That's scary. So I was working with an institution, and there was, we were talking about experiences, and there was a woman who a white woman just began to sit on city council, and she had voted for something that made her not a popular woman. And she said she started receiving hate mail, and it got scary because she was going in rooms and she didn't know who was a friend and who was a foe. And all I could do was look at her and say, welcome. That's my everyday lived experience. Every day. I can't assume everyone is a foe, but I damn sure can't assume everyone is a friend. That would be unwise of me. I know better.
A couple months ago, we've covered Eugenia and how she was made fun of by Charles II. Now we are going to see another woman whose protruding posterior landed her a career as a circus exhibit in 19th century London.
Has anybody locked up Kim Kardashian? No, she still gets to roam free with her ass, right? She just gets to just walk on out there, huh? Just nobody asked her to sign anything, huh? Okay, all right, well,
London. This is the tragic story of Hottentot Venus and my recreation of how she might have looked in real life. Her life doesn't start well. Her mother died when she was an infant and her father was killed by a bushman. Sarah was a woman of the indigenous Coco people of the southwestern area of Africa. At 4 feet 10 inches high, she was exhibited in London and France for her substantial levels of tissue on.
They just told you a human was exhibited. That's what a human, a person. That's what anti-blackness sounds like. A person was exhibited. Okay.
On her buttocks and thighs. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Here on Mortal Faces, I take portraits and transform them to see how individuals we read about might have looked in real life. So let's get started. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more historical recreations. And let me know in the comments who you'd like to see in real life. Born in 1789, her birth name is unknown, so they called her Sarah Bartman. She was born into an indigenous hunter-gatherer nomadic family.
I'm gonna just go ahead and throw it out there that she was from Africa, and they decided Sarah is what they were gonna go with. Sarah. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. It's cool.
Family called the Coco. Unfortunately, her parents were enslaved and put to work on a farm where her mother died and her father was killed while on duty years later. She was described as being independent and hardworking. Sarah predominantly spent her childhood on European-owned farms in South Africa, and in the 1790s, a free black trader named Peter Cesar met her and encouraged her to move to Cape Town. It is unsure if her family introduced her to Peter or if she went willingly or unwillingly, but she lived in Cape Town for at least 2 years, working as a washwoman and a nurse for Peter's family, then to a Dutchman, and finally a wet nurse for Peter's brother, Hendrik. Probably.
I'm just gonna pause. Wet nurses. We're familiar with what wet nurses are, right? Because they're not humans. And of course, these cows that happen to walk upright don't mind allowing my children to suckle their breast, right? Anti-blackness. I digress.
Homesick, she had to learn to navigate her new life swiftly as events unfolded rapidly for Sarah, which would fail to cease. We know she had 2 children during this time, but neither survived. She found love with a poor Dutch soldier, but unfortunately he too didn't stay long, as he had to move on with his regiment. So left without any prospects, Hendrik then began to show her in the city hospital in exchange for cash. Here, a surgeon named Alexander Dunlop had a side business supplying showmen in Britain with animal specimens. They had an idea. Perhaps her oversized posterior would make their fortune. He encouraged her to go to Europe because there she could earn money for herself, he said. Initially, Sarah refused the opportunity, but the surgeon was persistent, eventually persuading her. She only agreed if Hendrik would go with her. He too refused, but changed his mind. What was so intriguing about Sarah? Her condition, called steatopygia, which was a genetic buildup of fat in the buttocks region, was considered a novelty. In the early 19th century, people were intrigued by the fascinating and the...
Do you recall seeing this in fashion? I want you to think about Victorian fashion with the corsets on and the large bottoms. This is what they're emulating. So again, my likeness on me? No. In fashion and on white women, acceptable.
weird being displayed in popular exhibitions. Sarah's unique shape was exactly what the crowds would be attracted to. There was an affidavit that confirms their intention. It stated, he had then on her way from the Cape a female Hottentot of very singular appearance, that she would make the fortune of any person who showed her in London, and that he...
In the interest of time, I'm fast forward and let you know that they never let her go. She died. And she died from several things. One, she was whether she was forced into sex work, we'll never know. Most likely she died from syphilis, but she also, in order to numb herself, they say drank alcohol often. So it could have been cirrhosis, right? But the other part, just to dehumanize this woman a little bit more, is that upon her death, they placed her genitals and her body parts on display. Her vulva sat in a museum. Like, I wish that were the absurd. But for me, it sounds no different than the police who got mad because Sandra Bland got mouthy and now she's no longer here because she spoke up and spoke back. The dehumanization of Black women is something that has been perpetuated throughout history for as long as you can remember. You can think about all the art that you like, all the Victorian art, all the ancient art, and if you see white women in this art, they are poised and they are soft and they are in white robes and they are smiling. But if you can show me art of Black women drawn by white men where we look soft, and I'll buy you lunch. Dehumanizing individuals allows you to do certain things in society. Like what you say, Amber?
He was under an engagement.
This is Jezebel. So when you see tropes, there are certain tropes that you're going to see in Hollywood. For instance, one that you may recognize is the magical Negro. There are several movies that have a magical Negro. Bagger Vance, magical Negro, and white protagonists, right? The Green Mile, white protagonist, magical Negro. Because we can only really dig into a good, black character if he got some magical powers and he's gonna help our white friend, do some extraordinary stuff. Let's see. We have what's the movie? The Lone Ranger. You have a white, right? And who you got? Tonto, another magical person of color. Again, not someone who gets to simply be human. He must be more than human, right? He is magical. But because that way, if we hurt him and hit him, it's okay because he's not like other humans. He can take these things differently. That's dehumanization. For Black women, the reason that we need to dehumanize women that we've placed in slavery is because rape would be violent if they were normal humans. But Black women, in the Jezebel trope that you'll see on TV, Jezebel is a slave concept and a stereotype that paints Black women as evil and immoral. The Jezebel stereotype is synonymous with promiscuity and having an insatiable appetite, someone who uses sex to manipulate men. She's a conniving temptress who cannot be trusted. Accusing Black women of these traits and calling them Jezebels, which, if you recall, Trump called Kamala, also attempts to connect Black women to the famous and treacherous queen in the Bible called Jezebel, who was accused of having turned her husband's heart away from King Ahab and worshiped the one true God. It is not possible to rape someone who is insatiable. You see the connection? It's not possible that they weren't always asking for it because they love sex. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking this. Black women love sex. They can be raped. It's not possible. Well, apparently the numbers look the same now when Black women report rapes. You already only have a percentage of not only just Black women, but a large percentage of women already don't report sexual assaults. And when Black and brown women report sexual assaults, their accusers are taking the trial even less. The next trope that you're going to see, now mind you, I want you to be mindful of these tropes because tonight when you watch TV and you see Black women, this is why it's important when we say representation matters. Representation matters because when people of color or any marginalized population don't get to tell their own story, you get tropes and stereotypes. You get one-dimensional characters. Jezebel, to make her just a sex worker, to make her just her profession would make anyone small, as though she doesn't have other characteristics, other wants, other desires, other parts of herself. The real and present danger and truth is that Black girls need nurturing. The idea and concepts that in fact, this came from a study about K through 6th graders. And what they found is that overall, not just white people, overall, the respondents of this study found that Black girls need less nurturing, Black girls need less protection, Black girls need to be supported less, Black girls need to be comforted less, Black girls are more independent, Black girls know more about adult topics, and Black girls know more about sex. Now let me tell you how we speak to the consequence. Black girls have been nurtured less and thus don't seek nurturing. Black girls have been less protected and thus assume that protection is not available to them. Black girls have not been supported and thus do not seek support. How do I know? Because as my friends and I try to heal as Black women, to say I need help is often hard for most women. For someone with my identity who's been told your whole life you're so strong, the idea of not being able to control it all, to handle it all, to do it all, because you've been told that you have to work twice as hard for half. That is the most ridiculous thing that I have ever heard. But to internalize that I have to work twice as hard to receive half, why even start? Black girls need to be comforted less. No, Black girls have been comforted less. Black girls are more independent. No, Black girls have been required to be independent. Black girls know more about adult topics. No, Black and brown girls are at more risk for being sexually assaulted, and that's why they know about sex. Again, Please hear me and when I say, I don't care whether it's R. Kelly, I don't care whether it is Charlie Sheen, I don't care. There is no little girl fast enough to catch a grown man that doesn't like little girls. Period. I don't want to hear about she's so fast. I don't give a damn how fast she is. Only one of them is an adult. And saying that she is fast is already the adultification of young black girls. If you can recall your high school years, now mind you, I wasn't thick in high school. I was probably shaped like a teenage boy. But my friends who actually had hips and such, same outfits got sent home more. Why? The Jezebel trope says that she likes sex. We must get her fast self out of here. But my white friends could have shorts where I know I'm seeing the bottom of your butt. But she's not a Jezebel. I haven't internalized that she's a Jezebel, so she's fine. We're not going to send her home. That's what a lack of protection looks like. The adultification of young black girls is, again, why they are vulnerable in everyday situations. Now, every black woman on TV, we are past our time, so if you have to go, I understand. Every black woman on TV is not a Jezebel. They can also be mammy. Now, mammy is an image to make slavery a positive thing. Like your Aunt Jemima syrup. Aunt Jemima was an enslaved woman. That sound like she was having fun in the kitchen. That sound like she was like, oh, let me go in the kitchen and I'm gonna fix all y'all up some pancakes. No, that was her job that she didn't choose. And then they made this bottle after her. Do you think she made any money off of her likeness being used? Nah. Okay, the Mamie character implies that black women were only fit for one kind of work, and that's domestic work, thus serving to rationalize economic discrimination against black women in America and in Jim Crow times, keeping black women stuck primarily in menial and low-paying jobs and positions. Go to UAMS. When you go to UAMS, go look for black people, and I'll tell you where they are. They're going to be on the first floor. All right, they're going to be on the first floor where the cafeteria and environmental services are. Now, should they escape, like me, you may find them sitting outside the offices of white men. More often than not, the women sitting outside the offices, whether black, brown, or white, 9 out of 10 times have more education than the men that they're sitting outside the offices for. However, women banding together, well, that could also make change. But the truth also is white women have been able to, throughout history, choose between their whiteness and their femininity, and they don't always side with their femininity, which then leaves black and brown women over here alone. It is necessary to acknowledge the past if we're going to change the future, and it is necessary to acknowledge these things in our own behavior. Prior to understanding systems and all of that, I used to call little black girls fast sometimes. That is my mother. Stop that. She zooms me all the time. It's crazy. Okay. But I used to do that. So it's not like, oh, I want you to know these are things that I've had to unpack and learn all on my own. Trying to understand why I don't get to be considered beautiful, or why I get the backhanded compliment of, you're so pretty for a dark-skinned girl, or what do you mix with? Because it can't possibly be that you are singularly black and beautiful. You must have another ethnicity in your heritage. And I'd be like, black and regular black? But in my youth, I would call myself Blasian, because then people had an answer that they were comfortable with, and they didn't ask me any more questions. I'm Blasian. Me being black and Asian worked for them. They're like, it explains why she's beautiful. The average ones aren't. And now I'm just regular black and regular black. That's me. What's after Mammy? Well, the Mammy we've seen again. You're going to see this. And the thing is, they don't go anywhere. Now, Sapphire. Oh, Sapphire. Sapphire is the third black woman trope. Can y'all guess who she is? Cody, you can, because you look at you know who she is. Who is she? She an angry black woman. This is Sapphire. Sapphire is here to cuss you out, and they need you to believe that she woke up like that. She just woke up mad. Just every day. Not. She didn't get tired on the fact that she knew the answer, and people kept questioning her intelligence. She saw people look through her. She had people, when she chose to the grocery store, say, "Oh, come on," and then white women go around her and get in line. Right? She's been invisible in spaces where she shouldn't have been. She's had her intelligence questioned in spaces where she had more education and knowledge than anyone in the room. Oh, she's just angry for no reason. This is what you need to understand. I am an angry black woman. I am angry that I have to hold my breath when my son leaves this house until they come back home. I am angry that there are women who can hear me say that I'm angry that my son may not make it back home, and then they call themselves my allies. But allyship is simple. It means that you understand that we are at war and fighting the same war on the same side, and the consequences that can happen to me can happen to you. If your allyship means that you say Black Lives Matter and then be like, "Oh, that's horrible that black people are dying." No. Thomas Jefferson said, until the unaffected are as outraged as the affected, justice will never prevail. As a black female diversity specialist, when I walk in a room, I have to disarm individuals first. I have to be charming and witty and beautiful and knowledgeable. I don't have the luxury of getting it wrong. I have to be on point every time. It is not possible for me to do anything less. So do I have an excellent reputation as a diversity specialist? Damn right, because I have no other choice. But I was in a meeting several months ago with a white colleague of mine, white female, and we were working on this together. And we work together all the time, which is why I'm not going to tell you who she is. We were working with a new client, and there was a term that my white friend had never heard before. And she said, "Okay, I need everybody to go back. Like, I may have missed this, but can someone explain this to me?" I thought that I was going to oh my God. The ability to say, "I don't know," is not a luxury I've ever had in professional settings. And I got angry. It was traumatizing for me, because the first time I heard them say this term, I spent the night looking it up, so I did not know it twice. The fact that looking it up on her own, it didn't even make it that far. She didn't get that far to say, "I'm gonna need to look that up. Let me write that down so I can know what it is next time." No. Can somebody tell? Oh my God, you mean you could just ask for help? Oh shit. What go? Oh. I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at society that told me that I can't, but she can. And that she hadn't even, the thought of having to look it up on her own didn't even have to cross her mind. There was a woman who was interviewing for a position a while back, and she had just moved to this city, and she was interested in education. There was a white woman, and she said, "So, I emailed Dr. Jay Barth and told him I wanted to meet with him. In the meeting, I try to keep a straight face. Jay Barth is the education." He works for the city of Little Rock. He is the education person. He's literally over the superintendent. And I mean, I was just listening to this story. I was like, so she had an interest in education and said, "Who the manager of education? Hey, can I meet with you?" I was like, wow, that's amazing, because I work in education and Jay Barth calls me sometimes, but it took me 10 years to get a reputation where Jay Barth would call me. She moved to the city in December, said she emailed him in January. It's never crossed my mind to email Jay Barth out the blue, because I felt like he'd be like, and then when she told me the outcome of this conversation, how he had plugged her in and introduced her to I called my friend Aisha. I said, does that happen in life? They just pick up, they just put in the email. What? wow, huh. And that was flabbergasting to me. And when we get ready to talk about, Lovecraft, we'll get to that episode, but like it's simply the acknowledgement that there is a different path. And that path looks different. And not only does it look different just for white women, women of color, black women, but then you have to take the spectrum. The black diaspora is vast. Vast. Black women in Haiti are not like black women in the Dominican. Black women in Florida are not like black women here. Black women in Australia are not. The diaspora is vast, and there is still a constant, and that is misogynoir. And it's on every continent. It's not just here. Which means that the opposite and the antithesis, whiteness, is still a cover of protection for white women. Saying, hey, no one's saying that you shouldn't be protected. I'm saying, give me your umbrella sometimes, girl. Help me. Get me protected. Take me with you. When you get ready to email J Barth, girl, CC me just so he can know my name too. Does that make sense what I'm saying? There's a reason that I say my friends' names in rooms that they're not in. I have a platform. I've had success. I can do that. But I've had white friends a long time. And it still took me the same amount of time to reach those rooms that I'm in now. Does that make sense what I'm saying? The success that I have now, when people ask me to come be a keynote or to speak on a panel, I have 3 other people. Can I bring them too? I'm speaking next week somewhere, and I told them, they told, well, we're going to have you sit with the person. Listen, I have someone that I know is more knowledgeable than whoever you have. I don't know who they have. I don't care. They're coming with me. My white friends, take me with you. What I mean by that is people always say, oh, we're going to let you come to the barbecue. That's the cultural way of saying black people going. And I keep asking black people, why y'all keep letting people come to the barbecue? They don't take you to the boardroom. You keep letting them come to the barbecue. They ain't never invited you to go see the Smashing Pumpkins. I don't understand what's happening. Like, reciprocity. Right now, our sitting president is sitting there because he stood next to a black man for 8 years. It's the truth. Black people have said, I like Joe Biden. Why? Because he stood next to a black man. I don't fool with Joe Biden. Why? Because I'll never forget what you did to Anita Hill. Misogynoir is why this woman said Clarence Thomas sexually harassed me. He's not okay. But because patriarchy and sexism and misogyny is real, he is a sitting Supreme Court justice. And because misogynoir is real, we ran her name through the mud. Now, if we are going to never forget Lewinsky, could you imagine if she was a woman of color? It's the acknowledgement of who gets to be separate and who has to acknowledge that if one, like the idea that if one black person mess up in a job, we're like, oh, they ain't gonna never hire black people again. But Jen, if you lose your job, do you think, oh, if I do some bad, they ain't gonna never hire another white person? Do you think that? You ever said whatever? No. Yeah. No, I have. I'm like, oh God, they're gonna fire me. They ain't gonna never hire another black person again. I'd have messed it up for everybody. That's not okay. If we're going to judge individuals by being individuals, allow it to be. It's also true that when you are marginalized and by that forged in fire, there is a connectivity that is different. Right? What does misogynoir, smell it sound, look like in education? These beautiful girls that you see in front of you are 4 times more likely to be arrested, 3 times more likely to receive corporal punishment, 3 times more likely to be referred to by law enforcement, and twice as likely to be physically restrained than white girls. Because even at this small, they're wild and wily. Are they? Are they? All right. What does it look like in media? We just talked about that. It looks like Jezebel, Sapphire, and Mamie. The one that's angry, the one that only wants to have sex, and the one that she just like to serve because she's really good at it. What does it look like in media? Well, anti-blackness in media looks like us loving Elvis, but not knowing who Chuck Berry is, which is who he stole everything from, to the hips and all. What it looks like in media is knowing who Betty Boop is, but not knowing the black woman that her character is based off of, because she was a black woman, and they couldn't have made that cartoon black because that wouldn't make sense, even though the person named Mamie was black. But hey, what? I don't know. Braids or cornrows. Now, if you look at African busk and other art, black women have worn cornrows for a very long time because it's a protective style and it also is spiritual and cultural. Same with locks. However, they're not mainstream until Bo Derek the White model. And she had Bo Derek braids. What? Kylie Jenner lips. What? What does it look like in healthcare? It looks like us not losing our minds when we lose black women from maternal related complications. If the only thing that makes you different from being able to live through having children is your skin color, then you need to be just as mad as I am. When my friends tell me that they're pregnant, I want to be excited, but I think, will they be the one? Those are my thoughts. I can't even get to be excited because I'm afraid that I may not have my friend after they leave. Maternal related complication goes up to a year after birth. That includes everything from mental health and not being able to have treatment, complications with the body, but it also includes infant mortality. Now, if I'm telling you that the only difference between better outcomes is to have a doctor who looks like you, but then I tell you that black women like my sister only make up 2% of the field, then that means that you have to understand several truths even in that. What my sister, who is lighter than me, endured to even wear that white coat is different than other women who wear that white coat. And that's true. That when my sister learns, she doesn't get the opportunity to make mistakes. So she has to be good at what she does, right? When there is someone to be at fault, she's probably still going to be that person too. But because my sister can see herself in those patients and representation matters, she's going to go 30 seconds longer on CPR. And that has nothing to do with being a bad person. I told you about affinity bias when we first met. Things that are similar to us, we like them. That's why I love all Geminis, even though I don't know them. It is just a real thing. So do I think that there are white physicians purposefully killing black people? Some, but not all, not most. Genuinely, the average physician wants to help people. Nobody wants to have $300,000 in debt just to be a murderer. You could just kill people if you wanted to actually just be a murderer, right? But if you can't see me as human unless you can't see yourself in me, then there's already a barrier. There is these women right here. Every time you go get a pap smear, every time you birth a baby, every time you have fibroids removed, every time you have to go see your gynecologist and they fix something, I want you to thank these 3 black women right here, Antarka, Betsy, and Lucy. The father of gynecology is named Marion J. Sims. And if he is the father of gynecology, these 3 enslaved black women are the mothers of gynecology. Because he performed countless surgeries on them with no anesthesia because he said black women can't feel pain. And then after perfecting those surgeries, after making these beautiful black women undress in front of rooms with hundreds of white males, while they screamed in agony until they passed out and he woke them up and they continued to cut on their bodies. And then when he perfected those treatments, started performing them on white women and used anesthesia, the threat of anti-blacknism and misogynoir isn't just black women saying, oh, woe is me. It's saying, how can you care about me and you haven't cared about anyone before me? These women went through hell and he got a statue. They just took it down in 2020. And symbols matter. The National Association of Gynecology, obstetrics and gynecology, just apologized to these women a year ago. So, no, I can't make it through this content without crying, because generational trauma is real. Connectivity is real. I don't know them. I didn't get to meet Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy, and I haven't had anyone cut me open, but I have been in physicians' offices where I felt invisible, and I am telling you my problem, and you send me home like you did Dr. Rice in 2020. A Black female physician who had been treating COVID on the front lines, then got COVID and was sent home. And she went back and she recorded her experience. She said, I know they're treating me like this because I'm Black. I know it. And then she died a day later. She was a physician. And you have to understand that the saddest part is that the more education you have, the higher the risk. So being educated doesn't make me any less likely to die in healthcare. In fact, the scary part is, am I that much of a threat that when I'm knowledgeable, you hate me more? At the beginning in that poem, when she said, Black until proven innocent, like, it's all of it. But until you are able, and I say you as in society, until society is able to see Black women in their humanity, until society is ready to say, Black women are fragile. Black women need to be protected. Black women need to be held the same as white women. If I am in a conversation with my friends, and I am my white friends, and I'm telling them about my experience, and then she starts crying while we're out because of the racism that I experienced, and then I have to console her about my lived experience, that's exactly the issue. Because naturally, I now have to console you, but you're crying about my lived experience. It is not necessary for individuals to feel guilty for things that you did not do. It is necessary for those who want to be in public service, for those who want to be good citizens, for those who want to make a difference, to acknowledge that my experience is different than yours. And if we are standing on the same stage at any time in life, you would damn well better acknowledge everything it took for me to get there. Our experiences are not the same. And that includes if you're poor, if you grew up in impoverished households, if you are white, you still get the benefit of the doubt. No one's assumed that you're poor. No one's assumed. I grew up in a 2-parent home. Do you know how many times I've had teachers ask me, well, do you know who your dad is? The principal, heifer? Yeah, I know who he is. He did your what? I have medical students that come in my office and cry because they've had their mentors ask them, did you have a father growing up? Only 40% of American children grow up in a 2-parent home. Additionally, contrary to popular belief, you should just read the actual literature. Black men are more present in the everyday lives of their children than any other ethnicity. They don't have to be married to the mother. They don't have to be in a relationship with the mother. We're talking about being present, picking up, doing homework, all of these things. Is that the narrative that you hear about Black men? No, nobody's talking about that, but the data shows different. When I ask you to question what you think you know, question what you've been told, because this is the data. Black men are not the only ones being shot by police. They're not. Black women are being shot by police the same. As you can see, our Hispanic and Latino women are also being shot by police. And it's not, if you understand, I don't want other people to get shot by police. I'm saying if you can figure out to not shoot them, why the hell you can't figure out to not shoot me? Don't that make sense? You figured out to not. I've seen a man with a hatchet that ate somebody's face off make it to jail. But unarmed black men who are running away, no threat to the police, shot in the back, don't make it to jail. Understand this. I don't care what the news says. Even criminals deserve to make it to jail. That's what court's for. Criminals, they get to go. Plead a case. Question the narratives.
If I should die tomorrow at the hands of the policeman, ooh, and the papers say we're gonna call it a suicide, would you even question why? Shake your head, say this ain't right, or do your best to forget about me. Please, please, please don't forget about me. Oh, say my name, say my name, say my name, say my name, say my name. Don't forget my name. If I should die tomorrow at the hands of the policeman.
Every year, there have been two, we have the March for Black Women and Girls. And this is a march, and at this march, we acknowledge women who have been lost to gun violence or domestic violence. So Black women that are no longer here in society due to violence. And we read those names, and we're only talking about Arkansas names. We read those names every year. And this year it took us 7 minutes to get through all of those names. The truth is, yes, crime is often perpetuated by people who look like you, that you know. It is true that the average person does not go and perpetuate crimes against people they don't know. It's also true that those who've never been protected don't go ask for protection because they're used to not receiving protection. I have not yet found the manager of racism, but when I do, I'm gonna cuss him out. It is necessary for those of us doing this work to do it together. It is necessary for you to see yourself in me just like I see myself in you. If you wouldn't let it happen to you, don't let it happen to me. If you would fight for your kids for it, fight for my kids for it. When you go vote for your city council people, think about my kids too. So parties and politics should not get caught up in civil rights. This is true in human rights. The truth is also that all Trump supporters aren't racist. But here's my issue. Trump is racist and Trump is sexist, and that's not a deal breaker for you. And because that's not a deal breaker for you, that's a problem for me. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, my issue isn't that you're racist, it's that you don't give a damn that he is. That is what it looks like to allow hate and discrimination to persist. Be as outraged about what happens in my neighborhood as you are your neighborhood, because I'm gonna fight for your neighborhood. If you want your Doritos and they are oppressing you, and I'm gonna fight for your Doritos, because if I let them take your Doritos, they gonna come for mine next. So I can't let you lose your Doritos. But that means that you have to acknowledge that not only is anti-blackness prevalent, but it is woven into every facet of our society. When you have other people of color saying, I'm closer to white people than I am to black people, and you're like, ma'am, you this color. I'm this, like, you closer to them. And it's only odd because they don't think that you are closer to them, but you are delusional, and we could be doing these things together. But you can look at what happened to the last person who led the Rainbow Coalition. What happened? When Black leaders have worked to pull other people of color together on American soil, they've been assassinated. Everybody wants to quote King on the King holiday, but they only want the warm and fuzzies. They don't want to quote where King said, African Americans and the Negro has been trying to cash a check that keeps coming up void in America. I had a student last semester ask me, why am I on a different page than Martin Luther King? I'm not. King did have a dream, and then they shot him when he woke up. If you look at his beginning speeches and his later speeches, he sounds much less like Martin and much more like Malcolm, because there's only so much that you can take. And understand that in any culture, whether who, if we're talking about culture and society, who are white men gonna pick on? White women, right? Because that is who in society is under them. So if black men are hurt and traumatized, who are they then gonna traumatize? Black women. I need you like you need me. I can go be Sapphire for you, but I then need you to come be Amy Cooper for me. You get it? I can do that. But it takes us doing it together, not doing it against me. Not hoarding information. Talking, having conversations, getting uncomfortable, and not apologizing for my lived experience. I was like, are you sorry? I'm black and that you're white. I don't need you to be sorry. I need you to be helpful. Put your guilt down, put your trauma down. Like, let's do this together. Let's have conversations. I will let you ask me uncomfortable questions all day if after you get that information, you are armed and ready to go fight. Because that's what I have to do. And the truth is, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted as a black mom. I'm exhausted as a black wife. I'm exhausted as a black woman. I am exhausted as a black business owner. I'm exhausted in every way. And that is why we say Black Girl Magic. Because I have nothing left to give on some days. And people still come to sip from this cup. And sometimes I have nothing left to pour. I still have to answer questions in professional spaces from people who make twice as much as I do. But they come ask me for questions. They come ask me for help. Don't know what they're going to do till I get back. That is not okay. But if you aren't going to fight for me, every time I go fight for me, I'm just being angry. If I go fight for you, it's different. Amplifying voices is how we make a difference. I only need you to speak for me long enough to get me in the room. I'm comfortable talking. You can pass me the mic. But don't make me yell from outside. And don't invite me into unwelcoming spaces. Because I wouldn't do that to you. It is not on black and brown people and poor people to dismantle a system that is oppressing them. It is on individuals benefiting from the system that is oppressing people to dismantle it. It is in the acknowledgement of, yes, you studied hard and you worked your ass off, and that's how you got that job, and that's how you got that degree. And it's also true that you get to ask questions in rooms like, what's that? And I had to know before I got there. It's okay for those things to be true, but it's also necessary for you to know that that's true. Black women, white women, Hispanic women, Latino women, Mongolian women, we encounter unwelcoming spaces because overall, patriarchy, sexism, and misogyny are real. Imposter syndrome is what they like to call it. Nah, it's just discrimination. I'm competent as hell and I know how hard I've worked to get there. But instead of questioning everyone else at the table, I have internalized it sometimes, and I question whether I'm supposed to be at the table when I know I know I can't say what that word means. Do you see what I'm saying? Questioning while I'm at the table when I need to be like, should they be at the table? Because I know I know all the work I did. That is true. And that means that sometimes we have to question tables and do so aloud. Now, how do we get here? Because that's who I am. I'm going to say the thing, and I call that taking up space. And we have to take up space because that's what seeking justice looks like. It means